one of which was the sound of rocks sliding on rocks, or like a big rock sliding across another rock, which is an unusual sound in a cave because rocks don't normally run around and move on their own, especially big rocks. And they even mentioned that they, when they brought their dogs, I think its name was Skip, I don't know, I might be pulling that out of a movie or something. It's a little Jack Russell Terrier. They brought it down into the cave. Whip, yeah, that was it. They brought it down to the cave, and it wasn't acting like it normally did. Jack Russell Terriers are very intelligent animals, I can tell you that. For dogs, they're very intelligent dogs. And they said that normally it would just run around, and it would never go out of their sight, but it would run around the cave and enjoy itself. And when they brought it down into that cave, it was just scared shitless and wouldn't leave their side the whole time. And he said that after those clues and after those sounds, they should have just stopped right there and left and never returned to the cave. But for some reason, they assumed that nothing could happen, and they didn't. And so they continued drilling on the hole until eventually it became big enough for one of them to fit through. But the first thing they discovered when they attempted to get through the hole was that there were sharp rocks that were surrounding it, and loose rocks and chunks of the cave that were, attached to the wall. And so what they did is they soldered together, or welded together some custom-made tools to scrape those out. And so that's what they did. They scraped those out. And so a couple weeks later, the guy that's telling the story got a chance to crawl through the hole. And this hole that he's crawling through is so small that he had to twist his arm at a funny angle. So he has his one arm in front of him, one arm behind him. He can't. His head can't sit vertically. He has to turn his head horizontal to fit through, and he can't even take a deep breath because he's so crammed into this hole. And it took him I think he said a half an hour to get through the hole the first time. And so he finally gets through this hole onto this other side, and it's pretty cool because no other person's ever stood there before, as far as they know. And he went through the cave and took several pictures, and that was the first thing that shook my belief in the possibility of this story being real, was when he said that some of the pictures didn't develop that he took in this wider area of the room. And he said the significance of the room was two things. When the first thing you notice as you approach the room is that there's this big, round, unnatural-looking boulder, a really big one. And the next thing that's really unusual that you notice is something that he called hieroglyphs. I wouldn't even call it that. I'd call it like a symbol of some sort. He drew a representation of it on the website that you can check out. And the pictures of that didn't come out, but he does have a picture that shows in the background. You can see this big rock, and it does look pretty unnatural. And he didn't go very far because they didn't have any safety equipment or anything, and they didn't know really very much about caves, or whether it was just going to drop off or collapse or what. And so he left. They went back out of the cave, and they went around town. They found somebody who was apparently some kind of expert or just had a little bit more knowledge base in cave stuff, and I assume he was probably a little bit older than both of them too. And they told him about this, and they said that he got really excited and he couldn't wait to go down there and check it out. And so the three of them went down there, and they decided that it wouldn't be safe for him to go more than a half an hour, and so they agreed that he would go for a half an hour on the other side of the hole, and then he would come back and tell him what he saw and if it was safe and all that good stuff. And so he goes through there, and they wait a half an hour, and then they wait another half an hour, and they wait another half an hour, and it ends up to be 2 hours before the guy comes back. And he's all sweating and freaking out and acting weird, and just walks right past him and leaves the cave, and they're the one that gave him the ride there, apparently. So he waited for him at the truck, and they came out of the cave and got in the truck, and the whole ride home they're questioning him. I could see where they're coming from there. The guy just doesn't say a single word after he gets out of there, and they want to know what the heck's going on. And he's all shaky and sweating and acting weird, and they drop him off at his house, and that's the last time they see him for a long time. They try to call him. They stop at the house. He doesn't answer the door. Nobody in his family or around town sees him anywhere, and he just disappears out of existence all of a sudden. And so they decide it probably wouldn't be safe to go in there without some kind of equipment this time. So they decide they're going to go down to the cave with a little bit more equipment, figure out what the heck scared their buddy. And so they collected a few things, some of which were glow sticks for emergencies, which I think they might have already carried. A camera that can see in complete darkness, I think he said. And that doesn't make any sense because cameras can't see in complete darkness. Even with night vision, there always has to be some light source. But I assume that there's some sort of light source on the camera, a small infrared light source that allows the night vision to pick something up. And so they decided they'd bring that down there for evidence. And then they brought down a cave rescue phone, which is basically like a two-way radio connected with a cable. And you could stretch this long cable across through the cave and communicate with somebody at the surface, or somebody who is his friend B, who is going to be on the other side of the hole, on the explored side, I should say. And so they go back down there, just the two of them. And the guy that's writing this story, I really got to come up with a name for him. I think it's Ted. Yeah, Ted goes through the hole again, and he's got his little phone cord thing with him, and he goes through the room, and so now he's starting to go beyond the room, which is further than he's ever gone before. And I'm sure at this point he's wondering, what could this guy possibly be scared of? But if I were him, I would be creeped out, because, you know, he came back all freaking out, and you're all alone thousands of feet or hundreds of feet underground, surrounded by rock, and there's nowhere you can go. I mean, you got a 30-minute crawl back through a hole, or a run off through a cave that you don't know. You don't know where you are, or if there's another way out, or if there's jagged rocks and a cliff at the edge. You know, you have no idea where you are. And so he starts going down a more narrow part of the cave where he has to crouch, and he hears a sound behind him, and he jumps. It scares him so much he jumps, and his headlamp, the flashlight on his helmet, is shattered when he hits the ceiling. And he said he almost knocked himself out. He hit it so hard, and he turned around. He just froze. And yet again, that's another thing that connected with me. The stories, every reaction that he talked about, a lot more detail than I'm talking about here, was just realistic to what a person would actually do and what I think I would actually do. You know, just froze, listening for any possible details of what he just heard, and sounded like a rock moving. And so what he decided to do is just calm down and get on his phone and talk to B and tell him what he heard. So he picks up the phone, and of course it's dead. And so now you get the really creepy feelings coming on, because you're underground with no contact with the outside world, and whatever you just heard was behind you, which is your only way out. So yeah, that would kind of suck. And so he's got, oh yeah, and by the way, he's in complete darkness now. He can't see anything because his headlamp is shattered. And he's got these little glow sticks. So he pulls out a glow stick and snaps it completely in half because he's panicking so much. And so he pulls out another glow stick, and he gets this one to work, and doesn't see anything. And so he decides that he's got two choices. He can either go back and crawl back through the hole and get to safety, or face whatever it was, or he could go wander off into the cave and most likely just go off and die. And so eventually he decides he's going to go back through, and you know, there's no accepted stories other than like Loch Ness monster of actual monsters in existence. You know, there's got to be something logical, or so he convinces himself. And so he goes back through the room, and he doesn't see anything except for the huge, unusually shaped rock has moved from one side of the cave to the other, and it's sitting on top of the cable that connected him to the outside world, his caver phone. So it severed the wire, because you know, a huge rock would cut it pretty easily. And on top of that, where it was sitting before, there's now an opening that leads down into another portion of the cave that he's never seen before. And he says that he could have easily gone down there, fit down there, and explored it, but I don't think that would be in his mind right now. He'd probably want to get the hell out of there, which is exactly what he decided to do. And so he ran to the hole and started crawling back through that, and he starts hearing things behind him, and he smelled, I remember him saying he smelled something really bad, and he started to get really scared now, and he told his friend B just to go ahead and start getting out of the cave. And so that's what his friend did, And so his friend took off, and he's crawling through this thing that normally takes him 3 minutes to get through, getting all cut up because he's just dragging himself through it. And he said he hurt himself somehow after he crawled out of the hole because he just landed on the floor and just took off running. And so his friend B's probably 300, 400 feet ahead of him, and he's already climbed up the out of the cave. I forgot to explain at the beginning that in order to get into the cave, it's like 400-foot drop, and then a level plane, and then another like 20 or 30-foot drop surrounded by jagged rocks. So it's a very careful climb up there. And then beyond that, that's the rest where the rest of the cave was. And so his friend B's already gotten to the final climb. He's getting ready to go up the rope. And he gets up there, and they both start climbing the rope as fast as they can. And they get to the point where they're probably halfway up, and the rope tightens, as if there's, weight on the other end. Not necessarily something climbing, but like somebody was holding on to the rope on the other end, holding it tight. And so they're climbing probably 3 times, 4 times as fast now, going as fast as they can. And it's too far down to see anything. It's just too dark. And so they get all the way, stupid phone. They get all the way to the top, and they look at the rope, and the rope starts swinging as if there's somebody actually climbing up the rock, or up the rope now. And so you got this rope swinging back and forth, and they're sitting at the top, probably completely panicked. And what the rope does is it comes out of the cave and it's tied to a tree. And so he said he pulled out his pocket knife and cut the rope, and it just over the edge and fell. And in a way, as if there was something obviously on the rope. You couldn't mistake that, because if the rope was just taut, then it would have just flopped over the edge, or might have not even actually gone anywhere. And so now they're really freaked out, and they get in the truck and they go to their separate houses, And he says after this, things actually, the experience in the cave wasn't nearly as bad as what came afterwards, because afterwards he was just completely paranoid, completely nuts, and he was seeing things out of the corner of his eyes and sleeping, if at all, with the lights on, and just feeling real sick and just messed up, and had no idea what happened down there, what it was that could have been down there. And so he said eventually he had to get out of the house, and so he went to a place that was in town that was popular, some kind of area overlooking the city that was relaxing apparently, and it was at night. And surprisingly enough to him, he saw his friend there, that cave expert guy that they had brought down before that he hasn't talked to yet. And apparently, without saying anything to each other, the guy realized by the expression on his face that he'd gone down the cave, and they talked for a while, and they decided that they had to go back into this cave and figure out what had happened. Another thing I forgot to mention is what's so convincing about this story is almost everything I've told you about here. They've got pictures all the way along. They've got pictures of the hole. They've got pictures of the hole that's just been drilled on. They got pictures of them climbing through the hole, and just all kinds of things to back it up. It's not like just some stupid story. And another thing is the way it's formatted. It's not written out like some kind of fairy tale. It's part of it's his journal entries, and part of it's his reflection on what he's written in certain areas. And it's something you have to go to read to understand what I'm saying. It doesn't feel like some scary story that some guy made up. It sounds real. And then it takes its final twist where they talk about they're going to go back into the cave, and he mentioned that camera they brought down with him, that video camera that records in complete darkness, when he hit his head, he dropped the camera, he set it down, and he just forgot about it. He left it down there. And so he's pretty sure that whatever's on that camera is the proof that they need. And so they decide they're going down there, and they're going to bring a gun this time, some kind of handgun. I don't remember what it was. And so it's going to be all 3 of them. And they said they were going to bring cameras and all kinds of extra equipment and this gun. And they said that they should have answers within like 2 or 3 days or a few hours, and they would update the page as soon as they got back, update the web page as soon as they got back. And the web page is dated 2001, and it hasn't been updated for a year.
That's what got me, was the last entry was May of 2001, and nothing has been updated. And just like Ranger said, these guys took photos of everything they did in this cave, and if this if this is a hoax, then why did they take so much time on, writing down everything about this experience and breaking through this hole and to do some, to explore things that no man has ever gone before, and then all hell breaks loose. So there's a lot of unanswered questions.
There always are.
And here I am telling the story for like the 4th time, and it still just gets me on edge. I mean, I'm not like freaking out or anything, but it's just hard to explain.
It's mind-boggling too. Where are they? Did they get the camera? What's down there? What was on the rope?
And that's the thing, assuming this is all absolute truth, and that's obviously a huge assumption, and there's all kinds of excuses